Um, Jan Otta is Hartford Fund's Smart 529 consultant for all of West Virginia, and he has more than 15 years experience in the financial services and employee benefits industry and holds an MFA from Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. A native to the Mountain State, Jan lives and works in Beckley, West Virginia, where he is married and has 2 children. And Rod Barker from Edward Jones in Pinto introduced me to Jan, and I'm excited to hear today's presentation and learn about some options for my granddaughter. So Jan, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Randy, for having me. Thank you, Rod, for helping to facilitate this. I appreciate it. When Rod and I had originally set this up, it was pre-quarantine times, and I was really looking forward to being able to be there in person. I love traveling the state and talking about 529. I do it all the time. I've been in Rod's area several times. It's a gorgeous part of the country, and it's been my pleasure to be able to speak at chambers and rotaries and Kiwanis and things all over West Virginia. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. It's our pleasure.
A little bit about 529s in general, and then we can discuss West Virginia's Smart 529 specifically. 529s were originally started by a legislation that had the number 529 back in the 90s, in much the same way that 401k is affiliated with that number. 529s, which are college savings plans, are affiliated with that. It was initially meant to be strictly a college savings plan. It has expanded to be a whole lot more than that since its initial founding. When 529s first started, they were primarily run by states. Still is the case, although it has expanded to be financial institutions, and even some colleges have their own 529s. But it started out in West Virginia as West Virginia's prepaid college tuition plan. And the way that worked was that you would invest money into West Virginia's 529 based on the tuition at the most expensive school in the state, which was WVU, and whatever the tuition was in, say, 1999, you locked in tuition at that rate for a West Virginia school, and then when your child turned 18, no matter what year it was, they would be going in at the 1999 tuition rates, which was a really good deal. You had to, of course, invest every month. If you didn't, then sort of lock in only a certain number of credits that you'd be able to use at that later tuition rate. But it was tied to each specific state. In other words, if you had West Virginia's 529, you had to go to a school in West Virginia if you wanted to use those funds. And for Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, wherever you might be. Then in the late 90s, around 99, maybe 2000, they expanded that to, instead of being a prepaid plan, to now also having the option of an investment plan. West Virginia started their Smart 529, was started by State Treasurer John Perdue about 20 years ago. And they kept the prepaid plan up until the year 2003. So there are still some people who are using their prepaid college tuition plan from 2003 for their 17, 18-year-old that's going to college now. That plan will close in a couple of years completely. It closed to new investors back in 2000. But in that same period of time, they started Smart 529. And the way Smart 529 works is that it is an investment plan. You pick and choose from a variety of portfolios of investments that you might want. And it grows over the course of time as your child gets older. And then you use that money whenever they turn 18 for whatever post-secondary education you want. I chased him away. But you use it for whatever post-secondary education you want. In other words, like if you wanted to use a Smart 529 plan to go to WVU, you certainly can. But it can be used at any post-secondary institution around the country, more than 400 around the world. There are no limits to the type of institution it can be used at, so long as that institution requires some form of tuition. So in other words, a vocational school, a technical school, professional training. I have had people use their 529s to get their CDL license, to get their welding certification. It can be used for essentially any way of continuing your education, whether that has to be college. You can use community college, any sort of higher education. 529s are there to be able to use, which is great because initially it was only for one particular kind of education, and now it's expanded to be for a wide variety.
John, does that also include Can they use that now for pre-college, high school, private school?
Yeah, so in 2018, they passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I believe is what it was called. And in that legislation, it opened up the opportunity for people to use their 529 plans for K to 12 private school tuition only. The difference there, of course, is that if you're using it for post-secondary education, you can use it for tuition, room and board, books, supplies. You can buy a laptop, for your child if they need it for school, a wide variety of costs. And there's no limit to the amount that can be used. Whereas with the K through 12 private school tuition, it is tuition only, so you couldn't use it to say buy a uniform or books or anything like that. And it is maxed out at $10,000 a year. So that was great legislation in terms of the fact that it opened up an opportunity for people to use these funds in a way that hadn't existed before. Pardon me. But me personally, I think that while it's fine to use it for that, it's not really what a 529 was designed for. And in my thinking, if you are the type of person who is sending your kid to a private school, you're obviously already thinking about their future education. You care about where they're going to be able to go to school. There's no reason why you couldn't also use a 529 for both. Open a 529 plan to start that fund for their future education, and then also put the money in there that you would normally be putting towards the tuition anyway. Because every dollar that you put into a 529 plan is a dollar for dollar deduction you get to take off of your state taxes. So the benefit to somebody who's already paying for private school tuition is simply that now that $10,000 they can deduct right off the top line from their state taxable income, which is wonderful, But I wouldn't want anyone to open a plan just specifically for that. And we have not, since that legislation was enacted, we haven't really seen that being the case. Most people who are using it were already either investing in a 529 plan for the college education, or it opened up the door for them to hear somebody like me talk about 529s and what they can do for them. And then that way they were, able to open one and use it for both things. Then this past year, the Secure Act was passed, and that opened up the opportunity for 529 funds to be used for any costs associated with apprenticeships. So there are any number of apprenticeships in the state of West Virginia, from carpentry to nursing to all kinds of things. And so many careers now are looking at apprenticeships as a way of sort of getting that employee the job experience they need before they actually go to the job. Because you know how a lot of times when employers are looking for a new hire, they're looking for some job experience. And for example, in our area, New River Community and Technical College, they offer apprenticeship programs that coordinate and coincide with whatever degree the person is working towards. So it pairs them with local employers and things. And so now if there are costs associated with that apprenticeship, there's not a lot, but it could be things like uniforms or supplies or even housing occasionally, not very often, but occasionally if they have to, say, go away to be able to do that apprenticeship, 529s can be able to pay for that. Rod, you look like you had a question.
Yeah, this is basically for Randy. The Robert C. Byrd Center over here by Northrop Grumman. Is that an apprentice? Is that an apprentice program? I know they did some retraining when the Luke Mill closed for folks. Put them through the ship, stuff like that.
So I know IBM has an apprenticeship program already in place, and Northrop Grumman.
Will be the Robert C. Byrd Center. It's beside of Northrop Grumman.
Right.
You're right. The Robert C. Byrd Center. When I worked at Rocket Center, IBM had an apprenticeship, but so did at that time it was Alliance Tech Systems. They had apprenticeship where people pre-qualified out of high school to come in as composite machine operators. So yes, at that time, that center was being used to teach those out of high school become a certified composite machine operator.
And about apprenticeships. Oh, sorry, get ready. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to mention that we've been having discussions with the Votech Center to also sort of gear some of their training towards the Rocket Center in general, and they are really receptive to that, and so is the superintendent. So that's good.
Well, what I was about to say is that a lot of apprenticeships are paid apprenticeships anyway, so it's not necessarily that there's a lot of costs associated with them for them to have to use a 529, but still there are costs associated with, like I said, things like supplies and uniforms, whatever it might be. But for me to hear about places working towards apprenticeships, I think is wonderful, because if you think about it, we pushed an entire generation of students to go to college, which is great. We wanted people to have a higher education. But from like 1980 to now, we essentially lost a generation of skilled labor, you know?
Right.
And so now there's a lot of opportunities for skilled labor jobs, which is, again, one of the reasons I believe they expanded 529s to be able to use for things like vocational. Well, if you had a lot of people who, like, parents were going, well, I don't think college is necessarily right for my kid, and they exhibit a lot of skills with their hands, or whatever the case might be, now you can use it to become an electrician or a plumber or a carpenter or all those things that beforehand it would make parents hesitate to whether or not they should open 529 plan. So the fact that they can be used in anything like that, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty great. All right, go ahead, Jim.
The reality for our youth right now, a 2-year apprenticeship, they could be certified in one of the STEM items, like you said, electrician, plumbing, carpentry. They help them make more money during their lifetime getting certified in one of those skills than, they say, a 4-year liberal arts degree would. 4-year liberal arts degree doesn't do anything anymore.
And not just that, they also will not be burdened with 4 years of college debt, which of course is, the reason why I'm talking to anyone about 529s is that I want people to be relieved of that burden of college debt. The Secure Act, in addition to opening up the opportunity for apprenticeships, also opened up the opportunity for people to use a 529 to pay off their own student loan debt. I have talked to some people, particularly people my age, which I know, looking at me, I'm 21, but really I'm actually in my 40s. But people like me, we still have student loan debt. And so if you can have an opportunity to continue to pay off like you already were anyway, but use those payments through a 529 to be able to deduct that from your state taxes, it helps. It might not be a substantial amount, but if you can save $500 a year in taxes, that's something.
Yeah.
So now Smart 529. As I said, Smart 529 was started by State Treasurer John Perdue about 20 years ago. It is now grown to be worth a little over $2.6 billion. It has helped more than 35,000 West Virginia students go to some form of higher education. It has helped more than 110,000 people from other states all around the country be able to go to some form of higher education. There are different plans that Smart 529 has. There's a direct plan that people can just go on the website and sign up, and a lot of people do. But there's also the Hartford Smart 529, which is the plan that Rod markets and works with. And that plan allows for a financial advisor to be able to sort of guide people into their different investment options. Because, before I came to work to Smart 529, I knew nothing about investing. I mean, zero. Now I know all about Smart 529 and nothing else. So thank God I also know Rod, right? But it's a wonderful program that allows for you to choose from a wide variety of options of investing. So I'm going to share a screen here to show you a little bit about what those investment options are and how they work. So hopefully you see now a thing that says age-based portfolios on it. There are basically 3 or 4 different options that people can choose from when they're working with Rod or whomever to be able to open the plan. And the most popular one is the age-based portfolio, essentially because it's a set it and forget it kind of plan. If you invest in an age-based portfolio, it is based on how old your child or grandchild is when you open the plan. It starts out as a very aggressive portfolio. You can see 98% is in equities, 2% in fixed income. And then as the child gets older, and this is why I say it's a set it and forget it plan, the Hartford moves the portfolio into the new child's age without you having to do anything. So you don't have to, call up Hartford and say, okay, it's been my child's 4th birthday, I need to move to such and such. They manage those funds for you, and they are actively managed. to maintain that sort of growth balance that you're expected to have for whatever age portfolio it is. So these are definitely not passive portfolios. They are managed on a daily basis. And particularly when we go through turbulent times like we recently have, the Hartford team is very good about making sure that these portfolios stay on target for whatever particular makeup they have for your child or grandchild age. I will say this is the plan that I have for my kids. My daughter is 20. She just finished her second year of college. She's going to a school out of state, and she's a smart kid. She got some good scholarships, but with her scholarships and her 529, her college is paid for. So I've been extremely proud and happy about the way the age-based portfolio has done for her. So you can see as the child gets older, it gets more and more conservative, so that by the time they're 18, it's 3/4 in stable value, which, as the name obviously indicates, is very stable. It's designed to protect whatever principal and growth you have up to that point, and yet there's still an opportunity for a little bit more growth with some fixed income and equity built in. Now, the next options are our static portfolios, and this is where, in particular, Rod could really be of great help to people who are trying to figure out a plan that works best for them, because not everybody is going to want the age. You know, some people, they may have a 10-year-old child and they are just now starting to invest and they want to be a little more aggressive than whatever the portfolio offers. So Rod can work with them to show them how, you know, there's a Hartford Smart 529 checks and balances, and, you know, third fixed income, 2/3 equities. You've got an aggressive growth plan, a balanced plan if you want, you know, to still have some growth, but you're a little concerned about risk. And then, of course, there are those people who are very risk averse, and you can get the conservative plan. The nice thing is you don't just have to select one. As long as you invest 100% total of your investment in something, you can divide it up however you want. In other words, you could put 25% in aggressive growth, 25 in balance, 50 in conservative. Or you could even put 50% in the age-based portfolio and 10% in each of these 5. So that's a real way of opening up options that that Rod can explain to folks, probably better than I can, about how they can design a plan that fits specifically to them. So like, for example, if I'm talking to somebody who has a child who is approaching graduation and they've never invested in anything before, but they want to do something, I usually talk to them about the balanced portfolio, because there's still an opportunity. Let's say if a child is 15, I mean, there's still 3 years. There's a chance for some growth there. So I talk to them about balanced and maybe putting half of it in that and half of it in conservative, you know, along those lines. But if you've got say it again, sorry?
Just to identify the items listed, stocks and bonds, you know, stable, is that just cash? Just cash investment? Where? What is stable?
So our stable value fund is a conservative bond investment that is also backed by insurance companies. So it's designed to
bonds backed by insurance.
Yeah, it's designed to protect the principal, so that if, like, for example, we had a situation like we've had these past few months, you're not going to lose any money. I will say that, you know, once my daughter turned 18 and we were off to college, I moved everything into, which I'll show you on the next page, if it's on there. Yes, so I moved everything into the stable value portfolio, which you will see is at the bottom of that chart that goes from highest risk to lowest risk. Highest potential return, lowest potential return. So when my daughter turned 18, she was in the age-based. I moved everything out of there into the stable value. In the past few months, when the market has done everything that it has done, my plan has not lost $1. It has not gained a ton, but it has gained some, and it has not lost a dime. So that's the design behind stable value, is that even in the most turbulent times, you can at least feel comfortable knowing that you're not going to lose any money. So again, you know, sorry?
That was my problem. In the first quarter of this year, I lost 7.7%, even though only 31% of my investment was in stock.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a rough
I
quarter for everybody.
Money did. I have. Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it was definitely it was not a great quarter for anyone.
Now, let me ask you this.
Yes.
My son, with his investments, while he was in school, I kept it invested.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're still making contributions, like their freshman, sophomore, junior year in college,
Right.
could you move, so you put it in when they're 8 years old, they turn 18, can you move that value over to the stable fund so you protect what you
Absolutely.
save and then still continue to put in one of the growth or
Absolutely. Yeah. You are,
they could do that.
yeah, you are, the investor is in charge of their account. They can make changes to it. In terms of the investment choices, you are allowed to make investment changes twice a calendar year. You can change the amount you invest. Like if you're on a monthly investment amount of say $100 a month or 200 or whatever it might be, you can change that as often as you want. But in terms of changing the type of investment, you can only do it twice a year. And the logic behind that, of course, is that somebody who is watching the stocks on a daily basis and starts to get terrified and suddenly, moves everything from their aggressive where they've already lost, 30% of the value or whatever to a stable value, and then the market recovers, then they regret what they've done. So they don't want people just bouncing in and out of portfolios whenever they get nervous or excited. So twice a year changes to the investment portfolio. Few things to note about Smart 529. The account owner is always in control of the account. When the child turns 18, it doesn't go into their name. They can't cash it out and go buy a car. It is the account owner's investment. And so the account owner gets to decide when and where those distributions are made. The distributions can be made in one of two ways. They can either be made directly to the institution, or they can be made directly to you, the account owner, into whatever account you've been, contributing from. When you go to get those withdrawals, if you are doing it to your own checking account or whatever, you simply have to answer a question that says, is this a qualified educational expense? You say yes, the money goes directly to your account. It's up to you to maintain documentation for your taxes. So Hartford trusts you and understands that you're using this money for that purpose. It's always a good idea, I think, to hold on to receipts from universities, not just for the tuition, but also for things like books and supplies and whatnot, just in case there would ever be, any issues. Let's see, what am I thinking of next? Lost my train of thought. Questions real quick while I go back to pulling up some information. Does anybody have anything else?
I'm turning 68 next month, so I cannot put any more of my money. I'm turning 68 next month, so I cannot put any more money into a 401k.
Okay.
So as far as my future, I have to use a Roth IRA.
Okay.
I can switch around my money, my 401k, but I cannot add to it. Is there an age on the Hartford 529 Smart Money?
No, there's not. There's absolutely no age limit to when you open an account, and nor there is an age limit to a beneficiary. There are plenty of adults who go back to school, to advance their educations, and they can open 529 to use it for that as well. Yeah, no age limits whatsoever.
My son turned 30 June 8th. My daughter's turning 34 Friday, June 12th. I don't have any grandchildren yet, so I'm thinking about opening up an account for my grandchildren.
Okay.
But also, I have a BS degree and I have an industrial engineering degree. I've started my master's, but I have not finished my master's. Would I be available, not only for my grandchildren, can I invest in a Smart 529 to put myself through school to get my master's through
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I have quite a few adults who open a plan to go back and get exactly what you're talking about, to get masters or whatever the case might be. I have a lot of public school teachers
who adjunct professor if I have a master's. Yeah. I already applied at Potomac State. Said, yeah, get your master's and we'll hire you.
Yeah,
let me give you an idea on this too, Jim.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I had a person one time told me, he was a young guy, he's like 25 years old, and he said, he was telling me about a 529. He'd gotten a 529. I'm like, oh, well, how old's your child? And he said, I don't have any kids. I'm like, well, how do you have a 529? He said, well, I plan on having children someday. Why should I only save 18 years for college? I'm the owner and the beneficiary of it. It's my 529. When I have kids, I can change the beneficiary to Rod Bartlett Jr. And I've got 3 or 4 or 5 years built into that, plus the 18 years when they turn that. So
let me tell you
children, if they plan on having kids, they can open a 529 now if they plan on having kids. And
That is the smartest, most savviest 25-year-old I've heard in quite a while, because
sure
honestly, I mean,
Yeah,
Good, thanks.
but that would be
it's such a good idea. And like Rod said, is you name yourself as the beneficiary, and then if you do decide to go to school, then you can use it, certainly. But then whenever you have that child, you just change the beneficiary, you retain the ownership of the account. Now, obviously, when you are doing that as an adult, you don't want to choose the age-based portfolio, because that is designed for kids. You want to do one of the static options. You know, depending on how much you put in, and Rod can certainly go over this more effectively, because I forgot to add this disclaimer at the beginning, and I definitely want to make sure everybody knows the information I'm providing is strictly educational. I am not a financial advisor. I can't give financial advice or tax advice or investment advice or anything. That's all Rod's department. My role is strictly just to educate people about what 529s are. So forgive me for not mentioning that at the beginning, but I'm glad I did now, just so you guys know that. But yeah, I mean, if you can open an account, if you're that forward thinking and have the money to be able to do it, why not do it so you can get more than 18 years, you know?
Those extra few years mean a lot of additional
Absolutely.
money from the compounding. So
Absolutely.
And if, I'll go back to yours, Jim. You have two children. Say they both started that, and one, just for whatever reason, doesn't have children, but it started at 529. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jan, but if they don't have children and they've saved 5 or 6 years and they've given up the idea, and the other child has had children, they can transfer theirs to a family member to give to the other.
Absolutely. So
It's transferable.
since you said that, Rod, let me run through real quick a couple of the frequently asked questions that I get, because I think that will help answer some of this stuff. I'm not going to try and share this on the screen because it's not like well done. But so, okay, I do get asked a lot of times, let's say I save these 18 years or whatever, and my child doesn't go to college. What happens then? I always remind them that there's multiple options. It's not just college, vocational school, technical school, all those things that we mentioned. But if your child just simply doesn't want to go to anything beyond high school, you have some options. One, you can leave it in there and hope that the knucklehead changes their mind at some point, and it'll just continue to grow. You know, you can move it to the stable value fund and keep it safe until, in the hopes that they do change their mind. Or you can leave it in there until they have a child, and then you've got, oh my goodness, what a nest egg for that child's education, right? You can transfer the let's say they have a younger sibling that wants to go to school, or they have a cousin. You can transfer to anybody in the family, and family means a large number of people in terms of this. It's first cousins, nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, stepbrothers. I mean, you know, anybody in your family you can transfer beneficiary to. And then, of course, you know, if none of those things are options, you can withdraw it. I want to be very clear that if it is not used for educational purposes, there is a 10% penalty on the growth and taxes on the growth. So if over the course of 18 years you've invested $10,000 and it's grown to $40,000, it's possible, you'd get your $10,000 initial investment back, and then you would pay taxes on the $30,000 and 10% penalty on the $30,000. So it's still an investment. You know, there's still an opportunity for growth and all those things. But when you do use it for educational purposes, no taxes, no penalties, no problems. Let me look here. A couple more questions that I get asked a lot. Oh yeah, you do need to. So you know, Jim, you had said something about opening accounts for multiple people. You do have to name a beneficiary for each account, so you don't, like, I get asked a lot, you know, if I have 4 kids, do I need to open 4 accounts? You really should, because you name a specific beneficiary for each one. It's not required, of course. I mean, if you just wanted to open one account and put all the money in there, you could, but you do have to name a beneficiary. And, you know, God forbid you name one of your 4 kids as the beneficiary and something happens to you, then there could be issues down the road in terms of that money. So I definitely think that each child or grandchild has to have their own account. And then, of course, like I said, you know, you can change those beneficiaries at any time. Let's see. Scholarships. I get asked about that a lot. The great thing about 529s is that if your child gets a wonderful scholarship, you can withdraw from your 529 plan an amount equal to the scholarship, a one-time withdrawal of the amount equal to the scholarship with no penalties. Now, you will still have to pay taxes on that growth because it's not being used directly for educational purposes. But they don't want to penalize kid for doing well and getting a scholarship, so there's no penalties on the withdrawal of that money. Now, you all and I both know that the number of full ride scholarships that happens are few and far between. Even with my daughter's scholarship, and she got a really good one, we're still paying about $4,000 a semester. So, that's not cheap. And I'm happy that it's just that, because I know a lot of people, it's a lot more. Those are pretty much the three questions that I get asked most frequently. Do you guys have anything that I did not touch on?
I do.
Yes, sir.
The Promise Scholarship in West Virginia is great. My daughter benefited from that.
Right.
And the money in the 529 go towards room and board, or?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because the Promise, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Promise is just for tuition, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I thought. My niece got the Promise Scholarship as well. My daughter went out of state, but we weren't eligible for that. But yes, room and board, supplies, and actually can even be used for off-campus housing. You can use your 529 plan to pay for off-campus housing up to the cost of whatever the university charges for housing.
Okay.
So if if the rent is maybe $50 more a month than what the college would charge, you can use up to, and not including that 50, which is phenomenal, because
Yeah.
a lot of times you can get housing cheaper off campus than on campus, quite often.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, absolutely. Room and board, any expense associated with the education it can be used for, other than say like personal transportation. If you have to take your car from your house to college every day, you can't use it for the gas. But
One thing I would recommend too, I had a young client who started a 529. I was an advisor, pretty young advisor, and I just didn't know that this was an option. But I would recommend that you would have a successor owner.
Absolutely.
This guy he was actually my nephew. He was 34 years old. He was killed in a car accident, and we didn't have a successor owner. It was a nightmare after the probate and everything, getting it into his dad's name. So when I open an account now, if it would be, because it can't be mom and dad or grandma and grandpa's account, it's one owner,
right,
and the beneficiary, but you can have a successor owner. So if something would happen to dad or mom, the other one would take over should something happen to them. So I don't open accounts now without having that. You just never know.
I 100% agree with you, Rod. Now, I get a lot of people who tell me they don't want to name one. Maybe it's in a separated family situation or whatever the case might be. But I highly, highly recommend, even though it's not required on the application, I highly recommend people do the successor account. And now, since I just thought of that, I want to make sure some people know this other thing too. There are no limit to the number of accounts that a particular beneficiary could have. So if they do come from a family that is separated for whatever reason, mom can open an account for the kid, dad can open an account. Grandparents can open an account, parents can open an account. There's no limit to the number that particular beneficiary can have. There are limits to the amount in total that they can have in their 529 accounts. If they're one account or they're 10 accounts, how many ever they have, if it grows to be worth $400,000, first of all, yay, congratulations. Second of all, you cannot make any further contributions once it hits $400,000. A problem we all hope. And in terms of making contributions to accounts, if, say, for example, grandma and grandpa are the ones with the disposable income and they want to be the ones to open the account, but every now and then mom and dad have $50 they can put in here, $100 they can put in there, they can make the contribution to the account that grandma or grandpa opened, and they can then claim those contributions on their taxes. So it doesn't have to be the account you opened in order to be able to make those deductions from your own taxes. You just have to show evidence of your contribution to a 529 account.
Let me take that a step further. Is there any financial aid implications by having it through parents or grandparents? Because how far back does the FISA or the
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a good question too. In terms of the FAFSA, a 529 account that is in a parent's name is considered a parent asset. And so it reduces the amount of financial aid that the child can get by a whopping 5.64% beyond the first roughly $20,000. It varies by institution, it varies by state, but roughly the first $20,000 in your 529 account doesn't affect your financial aid whatsoever. And then beyond that, it's 5.64%. So in other words, if you had a 529 account worth $30,000, that $10,000, $564 would be reduced from their financial aid. Need-based financial aid, not scholarships. No effect on scholarships or grants or anything like that. It's only just need-based loans that they're getting for their financial aid. So obviously, if you can grow an account to $30,000, I'm sure you'd be more than happy to give up $564. That is money that you'd have to pay back anyway.
Right.
I mean, yes, it reduces the amount of financial aid you can get, but very limited. Now, grandparents do open accounts for grandkids all the time. And I think it's wonderful that they do, and they should. Contributions, though, whenever that check is cut from the grandparents' account, if it goes to the child or to the school, it counts as the child's asset. And then it can dramatically reduce the amount of financial aid they can get. So what I often advise grandparents to do, and I think you would hear this from most financial advisors and most anybody that talks about 529, invest in that plan until the child is 18 and continue to be the account owner. When they're 18 and when they're getting ready to consider where they're going to go to school beyond that, transfer the ownership to a parent. Transfer the ownership to whoever the primary guardian is. Now, if you're the grandparent and the primary guardian, then there's no concerns. But if you are the grandparent and you don't make that transfer of ownership, the next year they would count that as income for the child. So it would be an asset for their application on the FAFSA. So you can either
I have two questions now.
Yes, sir.
My last seminar with the Middle County Chamber of Commerce, M&T Bank, I learned a new concept of ladder CDs. Contributions can be made how often? Is it limited to a minimum amount of investment?
Jim, I didn't quite understand that. Could you say that again?
Okay. The contributions to Smart 529,
Yes.
can they be made, for instance, every 2 weeks at $50?
Yeah, you can make them daily if you want to. You can make contributions as often as you want. Yeah, there's no limit. There is a limit in terms of the federal gift tax and its implications on an annual basis. If you as an individual contribute more than $15,000 a year, or you as a married couple contribute more than $30,000 a year, there could be federal gift tax implications. That's something that Rod could look into more than I can. It varies by account and state, and all sorts of things. But there is no actual limit to the amount you could contribute until it reaches $400,000. And you can front load 5 years of contributions to avoid that federal gift tax implication. You can front load $75,000. Is that right, Rod? $75,000 for an individual and $150,000 for a couple?
Yeah. You do the first 5 years of the total amount.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is, 15.
Yeah, I think so too. It's either 70 or 75.
75.
Yeah, 75.
What constitutes a family? Is it based on bloodline? About foster kids, adopted kids? What is family?
So if you're talking about in terms of transferring the beneficiary, changing the beneficiary, foster kids would obviously be family. Anybody that you claim as a dependent is family. Then anybody in your immediate family circles, like first cousins, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters, stepbrothers, step-parents, things like that. But in terms of opening an account, you can open an account for anybody. One of you guys could have one for my kid if you wanted to.
Networking is best.
Guys, I know this is a lot of information to take in at once. I am going to email both Randy and Rod a PDF of some of the things that we talked about, as well as links to some things on Smart 529's website. You can do all of the enrolling on smart529.com if you want to, but I highly recommend asking Rod for his help, because he's an expert in this, and he can really help people get the right portfolio for their kids.
And he's going to know all the ins and outs, all the implications, how much, how often, things that you're not necessarily going to see on that website. So
Exactly. I mean, he's a financial advisor. He understands these things. The website is, the website is wonderful and provides a ton of information. But when it comes to tax advice or financial advice, it will tell you, please consult your personal financial advisor for further information.
One thing.
Ron,
Go ahead, Jim.
what is your contact information, Rod? How does one reach you?
Yeah, my phone number is 301 729.
Maryland.
Yeah, I'm up in Crescent Town. 301 729 2022. My office is in Bel Air Plaza next to Steve's Pharmacy and Da Vinci's Pizza.
Sure.
We're not taking face-to-face appointments right now just because of the COVID, but give me a call. We can set up a Zoom meeting like this. And I believe, Jan, I think Harper does this as well. Randy, I don't know how we could put something together. I could maybe work with Jan to get maybe a flyer or something of that nature. Businesses, we can set something up for a business, and I call it like an extra fringe benefit that they don't pay for. If they want to offer their employees the ability to do a 529 plan, we can set it up where payroll, if they already have direct deposit, they can have their direct deposit go to their checking account and $100 a month go to their Hartford 529.
Yeah, it's really great. It comes at absolutely no cost to the business. They simply make it available to their employees. The employees do not have to work with anybody in terms of their HR or anything to get it done. They simply work with Rod. There is a payroll direct deposit form that comes at the end of the application. When you're going through the application, Rod will show you there's different options you can choose of how you want to make contributions, and you can do more than one. But if you wanted to do payroll deduction, you just select that one. When you send it into Hartford, Hartford then sends you either via mail or email a form that you give to your payroll department. And then once that information is plugged into the payroll system, payroll person doesn't have to do anything else. They're not going to get a bill every month for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 employees that have 529s. It's directly between their paycheck and their 529 account. So
how easy is that? Well, Rod, we'll get together and we'll figure out a way to get that out to the members. That's terrific.
Yeah, it's a wonderful benefit, and it's something I wish
it is.
would jump on, because when you can get something like that through your payroll, you guys know how it is with every other payroll benefit. It's set it and forget it, and so you're more likely to not worry about how that money's doing.
Yeah, definitely. Thought I had another thing there too, but yeah, any questions you have, or just give me a call. We can set up a time to do a Zoom conference like this. Once life gets back to whatever normal is, Randy, if we want to do something like this again, I'm sure y'all would be glad to do it in person up in the Mineral County area, and we could maybe even attend an after hours together whenever that gets back to where it is.
Yeah.
I would love nothing more than the opportunity to do that. I'm getting cabin fever, man. So more than happy to come up to Mineral County.
That's perfect. Well, Jan and Rod, I really want to thank you for giving us tremendous information today.
Thanks, Randy.
I look forward to putting it on the website. People will be able to get to it anytime they want. So
Wonderful.
And they can rerun it. So if they've missed some information, they can go back and write it down and make a note. So that's good.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
Hey, Rod, since he mentioned that, I want to just say to you and say to Randy as well and everybody that, this program is not just for West Virginia residents. So, people in Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, anywhere can participate in it. So if you know folks who are operating businesses in those areas that might want to offer this, I'm happy to talk to them in this format as well.
Now I remember the one question I had.
Yes.
They were doing it at one point, and I'm assuming they probably still are, but do they still do it if the child is up to 1 year old? They feel like an extra $100 promotion, if you will?
If you open an account before a child turns 1, you get a free $100 deposited into the account. It's called the Bright Babies program. It's designed to sort of help those new parents, particularly when folks don't have a whole lot of disposable income, to at least have that account started, so that it can start to grow a little bit, and then they've already got it established. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. If people wait until they have enough money to open an account, they never do. Right. But if you can just get it started with that little bit of seed money, you'll throw in $5 here and $10 there before you know it's that. That Bright Babies program also pardon me, Jim, that Bright Babies program also applies to adopted children. So if you adopt a child and you open an account within the first year of their adoption, no matter how old they are, they get the $100 then as well. So that's been a really nice program for the foster kids and adopted kids in West Virginia. That particular benefit, the Bright Babies, that is just for West Virginia children, not out of state.
Right.
Gentlemen, thank you. I'm going to leave now. I really appreciate it, Randy and Rod and Jim. Thanks for joining in, and please share this with all your fellow chamber members.
Will do. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day. Stay cool.
You too.
Thank you all. Bless you all and be safe.
Thank you, Jim. You too.